Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, slaves of the global plantation! The Vinny Eastwood Show is bad news. It's like the news, but worse. It's the lighter side of genocide. Just because we're being exterminated doesn't mean we can't enjoy it. Otherwise, what's the point of being killed? The Vinny Eastwood Show, where the only thing worse than living in a high-tech global police state run by child-trafficking Satanists is Vinny's jokes. I mean, they're that bad. And my very special guest is the one, the only, the what on earth is happening himself, Mark Passio. Welcome back.
Vinny, always a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invite.
I get that a lot. Now, the thing about it is, I had my partner, Rebecca, talking about Halloween and how evil it is and that kind of thing, the occult holiday, and I was thinking to myself, you know what? I don't even know that much about Halloween and how it works, or occult holidays and things of that nature. Who do I know who knows enough about it to be able to talk on the subject? Mark Passio. There we go. All right, so he's on. Now, before we begin, I would like to remind people that this is a listener-supported show and has been for coming up on 15 years now. So go to the VinnyEastwoodShow.com, VinnyEastwood.com, and click on the little donate button, and you can donate through PayPal, KiwiBank, and Patreon. You can support my band, Vinny and the Vendettas, on Patreon. We're now getting into the studio and actually recording proper music now, and that's good with a proper producer, which is great. And I would also like to encourage you to, for the first time ever, Rebecca has made us a merch page. So we've got some t-shirts on there. The Nightmare on Molesworth t-shirt with the Prime Sinister Jacinda Ardern as Freddy Krueger. 1, 2, Cindy's coming for you. And also the Game of Drones t-shirt, and John Key putting the dick in Dictator, an illegal alien versus Predator, and what was this? Fortune cookies in the United States have gotten a bit darker lately. You says you're effed. My aspartame sense is tingling. The amazing Aspartaman. And ayahuasca the Grouch. We're getting into that. Okay, guys. Well, thank you very much for joining me, Mark. And so without further ado, would you be able to give us a little bit of a backgrounder on occult holidays, specifically Halloween?
Sure. Well, I break down the major occult holidays in my podcast for What on Earth is Happening. If anybody wants to check that out, you could see an extensive breakdown of occultism in general, its symbols, its holidays, its practices, etc. There at whatonearthishappening.com. But specifically, if we're talking about occult holidays, there's generally 8 of them that are observed during the course of the year, and they fall at the midpoints of the seasons and at the solstices and the equinoxes. The lesser of the holidays, the 4 what they would call lesser Sabbats, are the solstices and equinoxes. So you have the summer solstice, the winter solstice, the spring equinox, and the autumn equinox. And they form the cross of the zodiac. And then in between each of those holidays, at the midpoint of each season, you have the larger Sabbats, or the grand Sabbats. And the midpoint of spring is called Beltane or Walpurgisnacht, which is May 1st. The midpoint of summer is Lammas Day, August 1st. The midpoint of autumn would be All Hallows Eve, or Halloween, which is October 31st. And then the midpoint of winter is Imbolc, and that is, we call it Groundhog Day here in America. Candlemas is another name for it, and that's February 2nd. So those 4 high holidays of the occult year are the greater Sabbats. And the one that is observed as the highest occult holiday of the year in general is the midpoint of spring, because that's the season of rebirth. After the season of death, the winter concludes. The sun is making its way back into the northern hemisphere, of course, as observed from the northern hemisphere, after proceeding back above the equatorial 0 degree point. And that's essentially when spring begins. And then the midpoint is observed as the time when the most sacrifices would be made during the course of the occult year, of course, to the earth and the sun for a bountiful growing season, because we plant in the spring in general, and then the harvest season comes about in late summer and early fall. So if any blood sacrifice were to be done in the ancient world by occultists, specifically dark occultists, that would be the high holiday for doing that would be around May Day, from April 30th into May 1st. Halloween, or All Hallows Eve, another pagan / occult holiday, which is generally a celebration of the souls of the dead, hence the name All Hallows Eve. All Hallows Day, or All Saints and Souls Day is November 1st and 2nd. So you have All Saints Day November 1st, All Souls Day November 2nd. So I don't intrinsically, specifically see these times of the year inherently as evil. I just want to qualify that and say that it's a matter of the people who are celebrating them, the groups that celebrate them, and why, and what they do on those days that really determine whether it's a dark time of the year, a dark day of the year. I would say probably I would view the as far as dark occult practices, the darkest time of the year as May 1st, more so even than Halloween, All Hallows Eve on October 31st, because that seems to be the largest and most important Sabbath for sacrifices to be conducted, insofar as my research concludes, most certainly. So those are the 8 holidays, and I would encourage people to look into the general beliefs and practices of occultism, and understand special times of the year for them are especially the time of the year leading into the midpoint of spring, from the spring equinox into the midpoint of spring, which is what they call the season of sacrifice. Again, we talked about why they do blood rituals and sacrifices, but that's the time of the year you're likely to see false flags and ritualistic murders occur most prolifically. During any other time of the year, that general 40-day period in that time pocket.
So, I mean, why are these specifically so revered and used and things like that? They're ancient traditions, aren't they?
I would say they go back to the antiquity of human beings, most certainly. And, the reasons don't have to make sense to a person trying to logically analyze something. It's religion. I mean, let's face it. Religion doesn't have to make sense. It's distorted beliefs. So I'm not trying to tell anybody believe in this stuff. I'm trying to say there are people who believe in this stuff and take it very, very seriously, and observe ritualistic practices because of their religious beliefs that are sick, twisted, demented, psychopathic, and crazy. So, I give the example all the time. You don't have to believe in somebody else's twisted religion to be affected by it. If someone who is a radicalized Christian wants to go and take an automatic rifle and blast bullets into an abortion clinic because they are so vehement about their beliefs against abortion, if you happen to be sitting in the restaurant next door and some stray bullets fly through the window and hit you, you're affected by someone else's religious beliefs, whether you believe those things or not, whether you're radicalized that way or not. And this is what we have to understand, is that these people believe these beliefs. They take it very seriously. They have their own personal reasons for believing in this stuff, and we don't have to believe what they believe in. Many people will say, I don't study the occult because I don't believe in that stuff. Well, guess what? Occultists run the world. They are the ruling class, especially dark occultists. They're the people who are really calling the shots behind the scenes of politics and behind the scenes of finance. And people still really don't truly understand that. It's not really out in the public consciousness. It's still considered to be a fringe belief, when in fact there's tons and tons of evidence to support this. They're coming out in the open all the more all the time. And this is what they call in their occultic belief system the externalization of power, or the externalization of the hierarchy of power is one of the names for it. It's what I would call a silent war happening in the ranks of occultism, happening within the ranks of occultists. I would say it's probably, if I had to make an estimated guess, about an 80-20 split happening, where about 80% of dark occultists want to remain in the shadows. They want to remain hidden. They want to remain occulted, hidden from the view of the general, everyday, average person. And about 20%, I would say, want to come out in the open and rule the world as kings and queens. They want to externalize their power and just tell the world, we're the ruling class. We own and control everything. We own and control you. And if you step out of line and you do anything that we tell you not to do, then we're going to send, assassins. We're going to send police, military, henchmen, essentially, to either maim or murder you. And that's what a smaller portion of the ruling class wants. I'd say it's about 1 in 5 approximately, if I had to take an educated guess. And still about 8 out of 10, 4 out of 5 really want to remain hidden still and want to wage the war that they have been waging against humanity from an occult or hidden perspective.
I think when people are getting into this new study, they freak out immediately upon this information being presented to them, and they go out and they act on that information that they've only just learned and don't fully understand yet. What would be your advice to those people who listen to things, even stuff from you, and then immediately take it on board and start applying it even though they don't fully understand it yet?
I would say that you have to make the study of occultism in general a lifelong, eclectic study, that you don't have to be a specialist in any area, but you need a great deal of knowledge as a generalist. And if you take a little bit of understanding and then you try to run into the public sphere and just blather everything out, in front of your family, friends, or even the public at large, you're going to sound unhinged and unbalanced to them, because it's like a person who was waiting for a sound bite for a minute, 30 seconds, 90 seconds, whatever, gets a little bit of knowledge, gets a little bit of information, and then immediately turns around and starts screaming it from the hilltops. And people aren't going to respond well to that, because this is a far more complex study and a far more complex understanding of what's really happening and has been happening in human history than is going to be taken up by a 90-second soundbite. And that's what people have to understand, is you're not going to understand these systems, these societies. You're not going to understand the mindsets of the people who are really running things in a short order of time. It's a scholarly, lifelong, eclectic study is what is required, and there's a lot of complexity to it. It's not a simple thing. There's so many overlaps, and there's nuances to it. And that's what people have to really understand. And if they make a genuine study of it and they go in depth, I recommend my podcast as a jumping off point. It may not teach everybody every single thing, certainly. However, it will whet your appetite and show you the areas that you need to look into and study. Again, if I tried to put every single aspect of my knowledge or what I have read or taken in to my consciousness in my podcast. It wouldn't be 259 episodes. It would be 259,000 episodes, So, I try to condense things, give people the general idea and whet their appetite for further study and give them a few resources that they can look in and, then make a longer study of it themselves.
Yeah. I think I did make 6,000 videos, so I already did do this. It was basically my learning curve, right? I mean, people get into talk radio for all sorts of reasons. I wanted to learn from the horse's mouth, how people sit there and watch other people's videos or something like that. I didn't want to do that. I actually wanted to talk to them and then find out for myself. Now I feel like I've done my research and it's time to really do something about it. Even though the whole time for the last 15 years I have been doing something about it, right?
That's right.
And that's I don't know. It's a strange point that I find myself in now.
By speaking out. I mean, no one has to wait to get it perfect to begin speaking out. And again, that's not to say immediately start just blathering everything that you think you know when you have a small piece of it. However, you can, learn a corner of it. You can learn a little chunk of it, learn that well, and then put that out to other people so that they can begin to understand what's going on and, again, be encouraged to look deeper into things on their own. But, this is one of the tenets of the seminar that I give 6 months out of the year called How to Become the True Media is perfection is the enemy of good. And, while we've said that, people starting to learn about occultism shouldn't necessarily immediately run out on the street and, just try to make this the main topic of discussion and force people into talking about it because, again, it's going to seem like an unhinged thing. There is also a time where enough where you can begin putting that out there in a structured way, in a formalized way to other people so that they can begin learning it as well. And you don't have to wait till you have every single aspect of it or you feel like you have it all understood perfectly. This is the idea that I talk about as one of the tenets of my seminar, is that perfection is the enemy of good. Perfection is a mental construct that doesn't really exist in the 3D reality that we inhabit, that we live in every day. It's a construct that exists in the mind, and it's an ideal to aspire to. But if we make it the goal in the 3D physical world, then we're going to be waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting instead of actually putting material out, instead of creating infusing the truth into media and putting it out there. Yes.
Before my father died a few years ago, I went up to his batch and I sat down at the table and bang, I banged my knees. Ow! And he's like, yeah, you got to be careful with that. I made the table in an afternoon. And I go, okay. And he goes, yeah, and my son-in-law started a table the same time. That was 6 years ago. He still hasn't finished his table, and I've been eating at mine for 6 years.
Right. It may be rough around the edges, but it can do the job, And that's the idea of don't wait to get it perfect. Create something that is good, create something that is useful, create something that is functional, and you can improve upon your process and you can improve upon your information and your whole workflow as you go along. So that's, my advice to people. It's, again, one of the tenets that I try to teach students in my seminar called How to Become the True Media, where I teach the technology on how to do things like this.
Yeah, and people have been really loving those seminars and stuff, and this is not just the information that they really enjoy, it's also the group of people that come into those seminars. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Oh, absolutely. We have a new class of students each year, and we have class once a week for 3 hours. It's a 3-hour class. There's 23 classes that comprise the seminar. And then, after each class each week, we break up into informal discussion. So I'll usually stay for about an hour after each class and take questions from the students. And then I'll let them, sort of network amongst themselves and talk about anything that they want to talk about, technology, the state of the world, etc. And I'll let that run for a couple hours after the class each week. So it's sort of forms some camaraderie and brotherhood and sisterhood between the students. So it's a big part of it, student interaction. So I really like to see that and see people interacting with each other after each class, and then they sort of can then lean on each other and help each other and ask each other questions about technology and about approaches to creating media. And if they have problems, they could even help each other out and solve problems together. So it's a very valuable dynamic as part of the whole seminar as a whole.
Yeah, and I believe that this is something that's been largely missing from the truth movement in its entirety, is just socializing with other people who are part of your circle, kind of thing, and especially during lockdowns and things like that. People got isolated, and I think the longer you stay apart from just regular socializing, the brain is like a muscle, and if you don't exercise that muscle, it atrophies. And now you've got a lot of people out there, not just people in the truth movement, but a lot of people out there who are difficult to communicate with because they're not in the practice of talking and then listening, because they've been stuck just watching and haven't practiced their communication skills.
So I think it's so important to develop interpersonal skills, communication, to be a social being. And you do see a lot of that lacking in the truth and freedom movements, unfortunately, I'd have to say. A lot of people self-isolate. A lot of people don't want to interact and be social. And then when you spend any considerable amount of time around them, it shows. Now, I've made no bones about it that, I tend to be a little bit rough on people, especially people who aren't getting it. But that doesn't mean that I want to isolate myself and be completely antisocial. I don't consider myself an antisocial person. One of the reasons that it's been difficult, specifically personally for me, because the city of Philadelphia is a pretty unconscious place, unfortunately. It's very sad. When I talk about it, it kind of upsets me, because this is the foundational place of America, and the ideas that led to America, and the ideas of individual freedom, etc. And you look at the history of the place, and then you look at how much of a number that the control system has done upon this city, and it's very deeply saddening. And I try not to make me go further into any kind of despair or depression, because we have work to do to push this forward. And I'm not about giving up or telling anybody that they should give up. This battle, this war for souls, can still be won by good. It is possible. It looks bleak at this hour, based on what has been done and the strategies that have been employed. And if you look at just ratios of people that have any inkling what's going on, it looks very, very depressing. However, it can still be turned around. I tell people, if it can't be turned around, you'll see me voluntarily go away and stop speaking. As long as I'm speaking, I would say that there is still work to be done, and the battle still can be turned around, and we can ultimately win in the long term. That is a very, very tall task, however, based on where we're at. And I think that a lot of times people will get a little bit discouraged. They will undergo despair, and that dark night of the soul. And they think that the answer is to run away. It's one of the things I really kind of want to talk about in this interview personally, are people who want to isolate themselves away from other people, move out into the deep wilderness, go into total. I'm not knocking rural living. I'm saying that a lot of people who are already living in somewhat populated areas or regions immediately jump to, because consciousness is so bad, and this spiritual war that we're in is looking like it's going south, they want to run away. They have an attitude of escapism, and they think that just getting into the most sparsely populated rural area and just living their lives and or preparing for some type of a collapse or catastrophe is the answer, and is, you know, a good approach to this, and something that somehow promotes some type of a solution. And I'm here to just say that I really, really completely disagree with any aspect of that. I am not an isolationist. I am not a runaway. I am not a person who just seeks solace and refuge. I am not a person who thinks that escapism is the answer. I think direct engagement is the answer. I think more speech with the unconscious is the answer, and doing that in a smart way, doing that in an informed way. You know, I just think too many people have the attitude of, this isn't my fight, this isn't my task, I don't need to be doing this, I don't need to be engaging people, I need to, you know, find a place out in the wilderness, find a log cabin to run to and run away. And there's too many people with that attitude, far too many people. And you know, I think that's part of right brain imbalance. You know, as I've talked about, you know, healing, especially with the brain and the mind, and getting the aspects of the personality, masculine and feminine, balanced together in a cohesive unit, in unison, so that there's no contradiction, so that as we think, so we feel, and so we act, and there's no contradiction between those three modalities of consciousness. I find that people who are escapists don't have that balance. They're imbalanced to the right brain, and therefore they want to disengage, and they want to flee, and they want to escape, and they think escape is the solution. You have another group of people who think that just physicality and doing things and maybe inventing new technologies is going to be the answer. I find them equally imbalanced. I find them imbalanced more toward the left brain of the left brain modality of consciousness, and they think it's all about a physical solution. I hear there's a whole dynamic of people, Vinny, who listen to a portion of my work, and I could tell they haven't listened to a lot of it, and they will insist I am not putting forward solutions, that I'm just talking about negativity and negative stuff and bad stuff happening. And I can assure you, for anybody that has studied my work in any level of depth, that is absolutely not the case. The body of my work in and of itself represents the solution. And I'm not saying that egotistically. I'm saying that because it's the truth. I have analyzed what the problem is from a systems level perspective and truly discovered what the actual solution really is. And I have talked about that ad infinitum throughout the course of my work. It's very sad that I will still hear people say Passio doesn't give any solutions. The entirety of my work is the solution. The understanding of the occult world, the understanding of natural law, the understanding of objective morality, aligning your behavior with objective morality, exposing the truth. You know, there is no political solution to the spiritual war we are in. It is not about electing anybody. Of course, I'm an anarchist. I don't believe in politics. I don't believe in government as being morally legitimate. I don't believe in political parties. I don't believe in candidates. I don't believe in representatives. I believe in us presenting ourselves, us being responsible for ourselves, us truly being responsible for bettering who we are and helping other people to better themselves when they do not have the dynamic analyzed and understood correctly, and they do not have the solution in hand, and their behavior is wildly off course from alignment with natural law and objective morality. And, you know, I think that people have to understand that the solution's not going to come from any political aspect. Nowhere in the political sphere does the solution to this spiritual war lie. It is not going to come from the financial world. It's not about cryptocurrency. That's a small tool that could be useful and helpful in some ways, but that is not the ultimate answer or the ultimate solution. It is not going to come from technology itself, in and of itself. Technology is an aspect to the solution because it must be employed to put the word out. And again, that's what my How to Become the True Media seminar is all about, helping people to engage with the necessary technology such that they can put the word out as widely and as freely as they possibly can using the medium of the internet to connect minds and to connect ideas. So the solution is not going to come from the political sphere. It's not going to come from the financial sphere. It's not going to come from technology in and of itself. The solution is a change of mind. Mind always precedes manifestation. Causality. The realm of causality is the realm of the mind. And then that's going to give rise to the realm of manifestation. That's going to give rise to the realm of effects, what actually manifests and occurs in the 3D reality that then we must live in. If we don't change what is happening in mind, it is an impossibility by law to change what's happening around us as individuals and as collectively as a society. And I think this in and of itself is the overarching solution that people don't want to accept as the solution. They want to hear, they're waiting endlessly to hear what they want to hear instead of what the solution actually is. They can hear the solution and they'll reject it, and then they'll say this person presents no solution, when in fact the solution has been said to them over and over and over and over and over again, ad infinitum, ad nauseum. But they're waiting on hearing something that is more appealing to them. They're waiting on hearing something that is easier in their viewpoint, from their perspective. It's easier because changing the self and then helping others to change themselves, that's the hardest thing that there is to do. I mean, most people could probably become inventors and invent new technology before they would actually sit down and actually look at themselves in a mirror, analyze the things that are truly wrong with themselves, and then fix those things, and then go out into the world and help other people fix themselves. That's the last thing anybody wants to be involved with. That's the most unpopular work on earth. And that, unfortunately, is the answer. That is the solution that very, very, very few people want to hear, because they want to run away from that work. They want to move out into the wilderness someplace, and they want to just live a happy, peaceful life and not be engaged in that process. And I'm here to tell people, if you don't understand that what I just said is the solution, you really understand nothing about the nature of the problem. And you're not doing anything to assist in the problem and make it better, unfortunately. And that's most people.
Yeah, I think that's the fact of the matter is that people are just lazy. And also, our food supply and our information supply and everything's kind of been contaminated. So if you've been educated in this world and you've eaten this world's food and you've watched this world's media, the chances of you being an upstanding citizen, well, not even a citizen, just an upstanding individual who's willing to do what it takes just because it's the right thing to do, is fairly slim. And that means that only a very tiny fraction of a percentage, I wouldn't even say there's as much as 1% of people in this planet do actually have the kind of go up and gusto that you and I do. It's just like, I don't know if this is going to solve everything, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's the right thing to do. And I'm going to bust my hump, and I'm going to, sacrifice pretty much everything I care about in my life in order to do what is right. There's just too few of us. And the fact of the matter is, though, that we're infectious. You see people like us, and you listen to us long enough, and it actually sinks in that, yeah, I can actually do something. I haven't been completely disempowered, which is why it's so important for all of us to keep doing what we're doing.
That's right. Never give up. That's another huge tenet of my seminar. That's tenet number 10 out of 10. I have 10 overarching tenets for the How to Become the True Media seminar, which we're going into the home stretch into November and December where we conclude it. And number 10 is never give up. You have to be as tenacious as a pit bull that locks their jaws on its target. And you got to hold on and not let go and be completely tenacious and be persistent. Any endeavor in life that is truly worth doing requires constant effort. It's not something that you just make a quick effort and, oh, this is difficult, and then you let off the gas pedal. You have to keep pressing and pressing and pressing and pressing. It requires constant effort, constantly working it. And then you eventually see progress. And as you're doing that, that's how you develop mastery at that task. So that's one of the main tenets of the seminar is absolutely never give up. Never give up, never say die. Those have to be mantras in your vocabulary. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean sometimes it's a struggle. All right, it's just like getting up a mountain and stuff like that. Sometimes you need to just take a wee break and take a bit of a breather. All right, I'm keeping on going now. That's the kind of thing. Everybody wants to do everything all at once. Like I wanted to go out and convince everybody that 9/11 was an inside job, and I think I'm gonna convince my entire country in a year. Yeah, this is gonna be easy. Yeah. You see, you realize that your comfort and your dreams and your desires really don't matter as much as the truth does, and never will.
That's what people have to start making their life about. The purpose of their life is to serve truth. That has to come first. And there's no genuine life purpose or goal without that as a motivation. I would say there's no genuine relationship without that as a foundation. And that's why so many people are really miserable and are unfulfilled, and aren't really doing anything with their lives, aren't working towards something that is important and bigger than themselves. That's why you see so much depression. That's why you see people who are in dysfunctional, homes and relationships, etc. And, it is all about ultimately going within and finding one's purpose and what you're going to do in this whole great journey, and help to change the human condition for the better and get it out of the state of slavery and work toward a state of freedom and possibility. And that's what's going to make life truly worth living, not just serving the self and looking out for selfish interests constantly 24/7. That's not finding one's true purpose. That's just living in a state of egotism. And, that's the basis and the root of Satanism is egotism.
And just thinking about this, it's like how many people that are in the truth movement or claim to be in the truth movement who really don't actually get it, talk show hosts and filmmakers and documentary filmmakers and activists and so on and so forth. You have a conversation with these people for a period of time, and eventually you realize that they don't know who they're dealing with, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's one of the things, I'm going to be speaking at Anarchapulco 2023, and I've done several presentations now for the anarchist community in general, specifically geared to the anarchist community. And if you listen to that body of work that I've presented, none of it's extraordinarily positive. I'm explaining to them why they're failing as a community in general. And if I had to give a percentage, I'd say that if 2 out of 10 really truly understand the dynamics that we're really up against, we're doing well. And that's sad. That's not good, and I don't want to make it a berating presentation, but I want to make it something that is hard that is rough to hear in some ways, because I have to be brutally honest, and I have to tell them, like, they're not doing the inner work. Number one, most of them. Now, some of them are. I'm not gonna say, talk in total blanket sheet numbers, right? Like, okay, some of them are doing what's required. Some of them do understand who we're really up against and what the problem truly is and what the solution really is. But it's very few by comparison. Again, if I had to make it an 80-20 split, I'd say 8 out of 10 don't, and maybe 2 out of 10 do. However, that being said, there is a lot of potential there. There are people who are open-minded and at least ready to listen. So I have to give it my best try and try to explain a lot of these dynamics to them. The other aspect of the whole truth movement / freedom movement, freedom community, whatever you want to refer to it as, is, how many people who haven't really done the work upon themselves to the point where, I mean, would you really want to be friends with them? Like, I see so many people in this whole effort, community, whatever you want to call it, movement, that I want them to be free, and I hope they want me to be free. I hope they at least understand that that's what our ultimate goal here is freedom for all, not for some, not for a group of people, but for everyone, because that's our birthright as beings in the universe. But, beyond that, I don't know how much I would really want to know, hang out, be friends with many of them. Maybe a small portion, right? Maybe 1, 2, 3%, but not much beyond that. It's the idea, like, I want you to be free, and then please go your own way. Let me go mine. Let's live each other's life in a state of non-aggression, but I don't really want to associate. And it's sad, but I'm just being honest. You know what I mean? I feel like I have to be honest about where the dynamic is right now. And hey, maybe that'll change. Maybe people will do some more work on themselves and, be what I would consider kind of person I'd want to be around, trust, etc. But right now it doesn't stand that way. And, I feel like I have to be honest with the community about that. I have to put that out there, and, maybe that will help people work on these things. I think telling people what they want to hear is one of the greatest disservices that anybody really could ever do in humanity. Not to say everybody should just be bitchy little petty tyrants either, right? But you gotta sort of, tread the line in between those two states where I don't want to just tell people, oh, you're just fine the way you are, because most people are not fine the way that they are, including myself. Let's include myself in this dynamic in the equation, right? I have tons that I have to work on. Nobody should really just come out and just be saying, I'm okay perfectly the way that I am. I don't need to change anything. This is just how I am. The dynamic really should be moved toward, I'm open to improvement. I see areas that I can improve, and I'm open to working toward that type of improvement. This is what spiritual work is all about. This is what shadow work is ultimately all about. And I see too few people taking that type of a mindset, and all too many taking the mindset of I'm not the one that needs to be changed. It's all just external factors, and that nothing could be further from the truth.
Yeah, I've kind of woken up to that myself recently with all my health problems and things like that. In 2019, I got some blood tests and stuff like that. I was fine, all right, perfectly healthy. But after these last couple of years, I'm in real danger, of dying kind of thing, because of the amount of stress and difficulty that has ensued with all of this. And it's not just one aspect, like having to deal with lockdowns or something like that. It has to deal with losing your life's work and being persecuted and being arrested and also being left out in the cold by your own national truth movement figures. Like that kind of thing really, really hurts and doesn't make you feel any better. And so the big mistake that I had was trying to, figure out how the world works and everything, and ignoring my health. And now I have to really focus on getting myself healthy again, and need to incorporate that kind of thing. So it's the physical manifestation of my own body, and the manifestation of everybody else's bodies of work. I was focusing on one more than the other.
I'm really sorry to hear that those types of problems manifested, Vinny. I wish you all the luck in bringing that back to balance, and I'm sure you will. Um, that's one of the biggest aspects, one of the biggest dynamics in the whole process of initiation. It's about the activation of the body and the maintenance of the body as the vehicle for consciousness. And thankfully, I've largely been able to stay relatively in a state of equilibrium and homeostasis for the most part regarding that. Like, for example, like today, I just spent the day capping supplements, with my friend, and just working on just having those readily available. It's a big part of what I do is, body alchemy, bodily alchemy. Alchemy isn't just a mental construct and about symbolism. It's largely about allegory and symbol, but it's also there's a bodily aspect to it, where we have to put the correct nutrients in our body, and supplementation and tinctures, etc. And it's a big part of what I do and what I work on, in my own personal life. But yeah, we are all going to be faced with challenges in the 3D world. I mean, I'm right now facing the dynamic and the aspect of possibly losing my home and workspace. And starting this coming year in 2023, more likely than not, I'm going to have to just be taking everything and moving it elsewhere. And that's an extreme stressor in one's life, moving. Especially when you've built an entire operation in a place, and then having to pick that up and then reassemble it elsewhere is going to be a daunting task. So, that's one of the challenges I'm likely to be facing, more likely than not, I should say, in the coming year. And that's what we have to do. We have to try to steel ourselves against these stressors. We have to build up our body, our immune system, our tolerance for stress to a heavy duty extent if we don't want those factors to impact us extremely negatively. And that could be a job in and of itself. I mean, set the whole idea of creating media, putting it out to others, running a media operation, set even that to the side. It's about, you got to take care of yourself and your body first. That's, again, one of the steps of initiation. See if I could remember them. You have stop lying to yourself. That's step number one. Stop dreaming and imagining the world to be other than it is. Learn how to think. Learn the trivium process, the trivium education process. Learn the actual truth discovery methodology. That's learning how to think. And then live in the present moment. Understand and practice, not just understanding it just intellectually, but understanding it and practicing true present moment awareness, being completely focused on the task at hand, not being divided and your thoughts elsewhere. And then finally, the fifth one is the activation of the physical body, because it's going to be required for everything else that we do. The body should not be neglected. Health should not be neglected. We should understand nutrition. We should understand supplementation. We should understand, performance as far as moving the body and helping the body to stay strong. And then, getting into things like practicing martial arts, etc., for defense of the body. All of these things are equally as important as even the learning of the philosophy and then practicing putting that out to others. It all has to be done simultaneously, because if one aspect falls apart, the other aspects tend to suffer and fall apart as well.
Yeah. And at the moment, we are dealing with, I don't know, full spectrum dominance is a term I like quite a bit, because it absolutely describes in detail, really, what is going on here. And I think that it's too much for one person to really fight against. However, it's not too much for one person to understand. And that gives me at least a little bit of hope that, hey man, look, yes, it's bad. Yes, it's scary. And yes, it's difficult. But it's not impossible to understand. And it's not impossible to contribute something towards the solution. And it's difficult for people to have hope in a situation like this. And yet, hope exists.
I try to get people to the understanding that we have to try to take a realistic perspective about it. So my personal take is you can have an aspect of hope. I wouldn't tell people to be hopeless, right? And to just be negative all the time. That's not going to help you. That's not going to motivate you to do what you know that you're going to need to do to contribute to the solution and help solve the problem. So obviously, the idea of being black-pilled is not the answer, right? Being a doomer is not the answer. Just constant negative thought is going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. Also, believing that some savior is going to swoop down and rescue us from our own ignorance and incompetence is also not the answer. So I don't believe in, the concept of hope is, don't really do anything, just hope and pray that we're going to get out of this mess and something's going to save us from it. That's equally as imbalanced. I try to get people to the understanding and to the dynamic inside their own personality of look at the situation honestly, assess it realistically, assess it honestly and realistically, and then try to get other people to see it as it really is. So, looking at it from a super positive perspective isn't really the way that it really is, because it's very dark, it's very foreboding. We're on the precipice, let's face it. Okay. However, that shouldn't make people just shut off and say, oh, throw my hands up, it's hopeless. What can you do? Let's just go and wait to die, or be as comfortable as we can until we die. That's not the answer either. There has to be that balance between, I'm not going to look at it as, pie in the sky, looking at the world through rose-colored glasses, saying everything is just fine, everything is wonderful, it's all light and love, and I don't really need to do anything, or it's all in God's hands and it's all going to work out somehow. That's right brain imbalance. And then the doomer black pill perspective is everything sucks, it's all going to shit, nothing can be done, trying to do anything is useless and a waste of effort. So why not just lead a hedonistic life until you die, and try to get as much pleasure out of life as possible, and don't really do anything to try to change things for the better. That's a very left brain imbalanced perspective and an egotistical, selfish perspective. Neither one of these actually builds toward the answer and the solution, which is there is free will, there is consequence for free will. Natural law provides the consequences. It's that engine that it's like if you put your hand over a flame, the flesh is going to burn because it's hot, and if it's in proximity, you're going to get burnt. It's just the law. It's just the way things are. And that's the consequence. If you do that action in that condition, then there's a consequence for it. Natural law works the same way. It's an engine of consequentialism. It's a dynamic engine that if you do this type of behavior, here's going to be the result, and it's going to be chaotic, ugly. It's going to lead to evil. It's going to lead to chaos. It's going to lead to all kinds of things you don't want, like slavery and oppression and tyranny. If you do this other behavior, and you stop doing those behaviors that led to the chaos and the tyranny, then you're going to get a positive result. That's just how the law of creation works. And, if we just get people to understand how that dynamic works and, how it's being driven, and it's all being driven ultimately by our free will decisions and the behaviors that we choose and the behaviors that we then enact and put out into the world, we can create anything we want here. The possibility and the potential is completely unlimited. That's the good news. And the sad part is, the good news is all of the potential of changing it is in our hands. It's not in any external being's hands. We can choose to change it and then actually make it change through our behavior and through our free will. The sad news about that is so few people understand how that dynamic of creation works, and so few people are actually working toward the actual positive side of the equation. That you see all of that potential through the wondrous gift of free will is largely being just thrown away, thrown in the trash, squandered. And that's what I can't abide, and why I will sometimes get very angry and upset by the dynamics that I see. We have to take that gift and treasure it for what it is, because it's the literal engine that can completely change the dynamic of what we are experiencing. That's how the laws of manifestation really work. That's how the so-called laws of attraction actually function in reality. Through our free will-based behavior combined with natural law consequence to bring us the experiences that we then must live in and ultimately be responsible for.
How do you think that the population is going to respond if they were to ever have the media repeat 1,000 times a day through 1,000 different mediums the things that we say? Because I was just thinking about this the other day. Let's say a great documentary gets made exposing some lie or whatever, and the mainstream media doesn't pick it up, doesn't report on it, doesn't repeat it to people 1,000 times a day. What's going to happen to that? It's just going to become underground and so on and so forth. It really isn't going to change much. And, I was kind of like taken aback for a second, and I was like, wait, hold on a second. Nothing we do is ever going to be mainstream because we're telling the truth, and the mainstream is owned by liars. And they're the ones with this massive apparatus. They convince everybody in a matter of days that something that doesn't exist is real, and that they need to give up their rights and freedoms.
Exactly. And that's why people have to just get the idea that that institution is not there to tell you anything that resembles the truth in any way. It is there to tell you what you need to have in your mentation, in your consciousness, to keep you controlled, to keep you enslaved, to keep you completely disempowered and thinking, woe is poor little helpless, powerless me. I can't do anything to create change, and I'm just at the whim and mercy of the truly, powerful interests of this world. And there's nothing that can be done to change that dynamic. That is where the mainstream media wants people. Now, nothing could be further from the truth. That is not the case. Those are not the dynamics. That does not reflect the truth of existence. That does not reflect the truth of the situation that we are in. But that's what they want people to believe. And again, as long as people are tuning into that frequency is a program. That's why it's called a program. This is a program. Right? But it's a different kind of program. There's different code in this program. If you take it into yourself, it will program your mentation differently. And again, that's not going to automatically happen. You have to do that work. Okay? You are the one that actually accepts that program / code and then writes it into your internal program. And that's what they're doing all the time. All the time. They're just putting that wavelength, that frequency of that program into people's consciousness. And it's deliberately designed to disempower, to keep people ignorant, to keep them ill-informed, and to keep them ultimately enslaved. That's what the mainstream media is all about. That's why when I structured my seminar, I called it how to become the true media. Screw the mainstream media, the traditional media, the dinosaur media, whatever you want to refer to it as. They're, lying, prostitutes, as Gerald Celente calls them. They're just, whores being paid money to tell lies. That's it. That's all it is. That's all it ever has been. It's always been an institution that is completely worthless and that is just designed to put out crap for the mind. And what I'm trying to do is help people become truth tellers out in the wild and do what people like me and Vinny have been doing for many, many years, and that's acquire your well-read, hard-earned, hard-won analysis of things by truly analyzing the dynamic from a very varied and eclectic perspective of acquiring large amounts of information so that you really understand what is going on, and then speak that truth out into the world for others once you have recognized it yourself, once you have analyzed it and come to an understanding of it. Then you have to exercise the rhetoric stage of the trivium by putting that out there for other people so that they can then do the same round trip process themselves of gathering that knowledge, understanding it, and then putting it out there again for others so that the cycle continues. This is the true media. This is what the media is supposed to do. It's what it's supposed to be, and that's why people have to get off of the frequency of that garbage, dinosaur media that is only there to help it disempower and to enslave. And that's its job. That's who's paying them. The enslavers of humanity are paying these people. They're assisting them in enslaving humanity by keeping them ignorant, and they should all just be completely and utterly ashamed of themselves because they're traitors to humanity. They're basically Judas, taking their 30 pieces of silver to do a job every day, lying to people. It's one of the lowest life forms that could ever possibly exist in the entire universe is purveyors of mainstream media garbage nonsense.
Yeah, and there's garbage on our side too, and the whole kind of, look, right before Flat Earth, Trump, and I forget what was the other one, Q, yeah. Mm-hmm. There was a point in the truth movement where we were really strong, we were really together, and then Flat Earth, Trump, and Q came along, and now everybody hates each other just as much as the right hates the left in America. Yep. Right?
Because everybody buys into a religion at some point. And if there's one thing I'm the most viciously hated for, it is calling people on their religious beliefs, calling people on buying into religious ideas that I call, and many other researchers have just identified as, psychological warfare operations. These are psyops. And, when you tell people your religion isn't true, it's false. It's not how reality works. You've been duped. You've bought into something that isn't real. They hate you for it because they want that hope, and they want that one thing that they can latch onto and identify with and be like, this is the thing that's going to do it. This is the thing that's the most important. Here's my savior. This is what's going to save us. And it's just it's a 5-year-old child. Not even. It's a 3-year-old child that doesn't even know how to do mathematics at all, and it's an absolute psychological master, just taking their money from them, taking their candy from them, just having their way with them, and it's sad. It's really, really sad, man. Yeah. That's the only thing that I could say. I've said before, religion is the one and only problem. There's only really one problem. People believe in things that are completely false and untrue, and they latch onto it with religious fervor and make it their identity. All religion has to be destroyed. I don't care whether it's cultural religious belief that isn't true. I don't care whether it's belief about money. I don't care whether it's belief about government and authority, or if it's belief in all the different psyops that are out there, like the next political figure is going to be the savior of humanity, or there's a group of intelligence and military operatives working on the inside as white hats to save us all.
That was another thing, just on that note, people believing in that actually believe that the police and military, that order-following cult members are going to save humanity.
Yep.
Just think about that for just 2 seconds, and it doesn't make sense.
Oh boy. So again, what this shows you, or at least what it shows me most certainly, is that the people we're dealing with in our own movement that will say to each other, the dynamic that they will speak to each other is, we want everybody to be free. I want to be free. I want you to be free. I want that person to be free. I want everybody to be free. They'll say this with their mouth. They'll say this with their words. And then when you analyze what they have at their disposal in the aspect of, what can you really do? What can you bring to the table? What do you bring to the table mentally, psychologically, spiritually, skill set wise, resource wise? In the dynamic that you're going to be a soul warrior, what do you really ultimately truly bring to the table? And then the answer is, they long term, they bring nothing to the table, or they bring garbage to the table. They bring things to the table that they're not contributing to the war effort. They're not contributing to the solution. They require cleanup. They require distillation and getting all of these poisonous toxins that they're bringing to the table filtered out, and that's what psyops are designed to do. They're very intelligently designed to do that, to get people bailing a bucket of water out of their boat. That's the psyop is there to dump water in the boat, and instead of making progress, you're bailing water out of the boat. That's what the psyop is designed to do. The psyop is designed to insert toxicity and divisiveness into the whole community. And that's all these psyops have done. They've done nothing other than that. They are perfectly positioned and designed for the people that do not have discernment to be able to analyze reality correctly. See, that's the trivium process. This is why the trivium is so important, and I talk about it in a lot of my work. If you don't have the process of the trivium in hand, you can't undergo the dynamic of initiation of step number 3, learn how to think. See, psyops don't work on people that know how to think and have the trivium firmly in hand. They can't work on people like that, because you run it through the trivium process and it comes out showing all of its toxicity and poison. It doesn't come out squeaky clean, It comes out as dirty as it went in, because the trivium process completely filters that out of the equation, and it shows it as the hunk of toxin that it is. And the problem is, the large portion of the truth community, the large portion of the freedom community, does not have the trivium process in hand. They do not know how to exercise it. They do not know how to apply it. Therefore, even if they do have some other aspects of the initiatory process in place, like the activation of the physical body, or
which reminds me, I need to activate my physical body and take a wiki leak. Keep going. I'll be right back.
They might have other aspects of the wake up process in hand, of the spiritual awakening. But if they don't have the dynamic of being able to truly exercise real world discernment over what is true versus what is not, then they're not going to be an attribute to the freedom community. They're going to be a detriment to it. And this is what people have to begin to learn. They have to begin to learn, how do you weed out logical inconsistencies? How would you be able to tell for yourself without believing anybody? See, this is part of one of the things that people will often do, right? They'll jump from belief system to belief system, right? So they'll jump from believing one group of people or person to then believing in another group of people or what another person told them. And both things are equally as wrong to do. We shouldn't be believing anybody. We should have the tools at our disposal to be able to know with certainty how something works, or whether something is true or not, or what truly really happened, what truly really occurred. Only the trivium is going to put that process of truth discovery and accurate analysis and understanding in your toolbox, in your set of tools that you're going to use for analysis of reality. And again, most people don't have that. They jump from belief system to belief system, and it's just engaging in a religion and then saying, well, I believe that is my religion, and I made that part of my identity, and now some of this other information came to my attention, and I'm not really going to check it, just like I didn't check with my original religious belief. I'm not going to check this one with the tools of the trivium toolbox, right? I'm just going to say, now I believe in this. And before I believed in this, and now I believe in this new thing that this other group or this other person told me to believe in. All of these things are equally garbage. They're equally useless. Belief is meaningless. It's all about whether you have the tools to prove something or to know with certainty or not. That's it. And most people don't. And the sad part about it is it shows that absolute wretched nature of the education system. And I look to my own education in the past, and I realize how almost completely privileged being able to go through some of the educational systems that I went through that helped me to, even though I still received the brainwashing and still received the indoctrination to a large degree, to help me to undo it later in life, after I had already gone through that indoctrination and brainwashing. That's what allowed me to eventually set aside dark occult belief systems and get out of that cult. It's what led me to believe to get out of the belief that there was any legitimacy to authority and become a true anarchist. It's what led me to understand the positive aspects of the occult that these secret societies and dark occult systems are truly trying to hide from people, so that they don't understand what's really going on, and they do not understand the natural law dynamics involved all around us. And I had a instead of a public K through 8 education, I had a Catholic elementary schooling education, which it may not be the greatest thing that exists, but it's certainly better than the public schooling system. And then in high school, I received a Jesuit education. So I went to a Jesuit preparatory high school that is, really teaching people aspects of the trivium. And people will be like, isn't it more religious indoctrination? I would say that my Jesuit schooling did not contain religious indoctrination to a very large extent. Some teachers and priests may have leaned toward that, but to be really honest, the if we're going to just briefly talk about education here in this part of the interview, the Jesuit education, at least as it was designed when I went to high school years ago, was not there to try to just force indoctrination and force religion into you. They took the approach, almost all of the teachers and the priests and or brothers of the school that I went to, at least, was about showing you the reasons that they came to the conclusions that they came to. So they gave you all of that information, and they showed you their thought process of why they reached the conclusions that they did, and left it to you based upon having that information and that knowledge to then analyze it yourself and attempt to come to the same conclusions, like a scientific process. Believe it or not, people will be like, oh no, there's no religious schools like that. There are. The real Jesuit education, at least as I received it, was giving people those tool sets, and I kind of respected it as such. It left an impression saying, well, they really weren't trying to just beat this into you. They were trying to explain why this is the conclusion that they had come to, and then give you the tool set to come to the same conclusion, or a different conclusion if you did. Now, of course, I did come to a different conclusion, but I respected the process that they used to try to show you Here's why we believe what we believe. Here's why we feel that we understand this the way we understand it. And that I feel tremendously thankful for being able to get that type of an education, which most people never do get. They get an education that is just paid for by the state. It is just an indoctrination process, and it doesn't contain any part of that. They tell you, you believe this, you spit it, accept this as true, spit it back on the test, get the grade to pass to the next grade, and that's it. And that's largely what our school systems have become. Thankfully, I did not really go through that much of a deep indoctrinatory process, and I didn't go through that type of a gauntlet, that type of a ringer, if you will. And perhaps that's why I was still able to think for myself to an extent, to begin to understand how things really worked and come out of, the former indoctrinated and brainwashed mindset that the state and the mainstream media puts people into.
I think that the indoctrination that we go through is pretty systemic in the point that it programs your entire mind and your entire way of thinking about things without you actually necessarily realizing it. That's what's so pernicious about it, is you have a life essentially that is yours, but you're not good enough. And unless you do this thing over here, kitty, come and get this thing, get your qualification. And then as soon as you get your qualification, they go, you actually got to do this bit of education. Now you got to get even more qualifications. And then after you get like that, now you got to get a job and stuff like that. And then you're in the job, kitty. And you're just like, okay, you got to do what we tell you. And then you're going to get your promotion. And you're going to, you're going to keep doing what we tell you, get another promotion, and so on and so forth, to the point where people are 40 years old and they haven't lived a day in their life.
That's right. And they've made that their identity. And that's like the purpose for being for many of them, which is even more extraordinarily sad. And that's a tall order to change, because people get wrapped up in that identity. That's ego identification, as I talk about it in my earlier work. Seeing the role that you're playing in life, seeing, the aspect of who you are in your job or your family life or your work identity or your religious identity. And that's not really who we are as a being. All the way, you strip all of those things away, and what's ultimately left underneath it is who we really are as a being. That's true consciousness, pure consciousness. And again, without doing shadow work and spiritual work upon oneself, whatever you want to call that, you can call that psychoanalysis, you can call that I tend to call it shadow work in my material, because it's part of spiritual uncovering of things that you really don't like about yourself, that should be changed. And that's very frightening work for most people. They don't want to look at the inner world of their own psyche, because it drudges up trauma. It drudges up psychological aspects that they'd prefer not to deal with. It drudges up ugliness in many aspects of who they are and how they behave. And again, it's no different for anyone. You could talk about the same process for me or you or anyone. These are things that most people would prefer not looking at, not paying attention to, not dealing with. And unfortunately, they never really go away. They sit nested, they sit hidden in the subconscious mind and in deep layers of hidden layers of the psyche, and they fester there, and that is what makes many people hold on to different aspects of their identity and not be willing to let them go. They see it as ego death, because they're only ever engaging with the self from the perspective of the ego, and they're never engaging it from a level of consciousness and true awareness. And that's why people have such a difficult time being told that they were duped, being told that they're wrong about their current view of reality. And there's no easy way to tell somebody, as an adult, I'm trying to tell another adult, who we tend to, think of the idea that we don't really want to be told that we're wrong by other people. So it's a very difficult task to, in a way that will actually motivate them to change, tell another human being, you've seen reality incorrectly for the majority, if not the entirety, of your adult life. Just think about that, and how just saying it like that almost sounds like an insult to them from an egoic perspective, from the perspective of the ego. That's like a smack in the mouth. That's like a punch across the jaw. It can seem to that egoic person enormously disrespectful. And that's why we have to come up with approaches to helping them to alleviate guilt within themselves for falling for these psyops, for falling for these false stories, for falling for these narratives. One of the biggest things that we have to look at is the bullshit stories that we tell ourselves, right? About who we are, right? It's not just falling for false narratives that are externally pushed toward us and pushed upon us. That's one aspect of the awakening process and the shadow work process. But, one of the biggest aspects of it is, how many nonsense stories do we tell ourselves and then believe about ourselves? How about, I'm not, like as you were saying earlier, how many people tell themselves, oh, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not able to do this, I won't be able to learn this, I'm not a quick learner, I'm going to fail. We have all these negative narratives and stories that we tell ourselves before we even try, before we even sit down to make an effort in any aspect of doing something. We're already battling these negative BS stories that we're telling ourselves. That's part of the first thing that has to change. And again, that's step one of initiation. The initiatory process in the true positive occult world is stop lying to yourself. That means stop telling yourself the BS stories that you've been telling yourself and that you've latched on and you believe as an aspect of your identity. And that is that also your education was 100% correct or top notch, or you can't be fooled, or you came to the correct conclusion and everybody else is wrong. You got to be able to check yourself. And the way that you check yourself is with the trivium process. It's with shadow work, and the trivium are the two most indispensable tools for really checking the self and the BS stories that we tell ourselves, and the ego identification narratives that we've latched onto as telling ourselves that this is our own identity and there's no other aspect to our identity.
Yeah, I'm kind of getting bored of people's sort of thing. They want to get all their ducks in a row first, or they why would anybody listen to me, or so on and so forth. There's just all these myriad of excuses ad infinitum that people just use as a justification to sit around continuing doing nothing about a situation that is progressively getting worse for everyone. Right? As in, you're not letting yourself down. You're letting existence itself down by lying to yourself and saying that you're not good enough. Yes, you are. Yes, you are good enough to start a radio show. Yes, you are good enough to start a YouTube channel or whatever the hell. Yes, you are good enough to go out and try to educate people. You are. You're not perfect at it. And you never will be, so who cares? Just frickin' do it. Stop wasting my time telling me all your ideas. Because right. I know for a fact that you keep coming up with these ideas, really great ideas, but you let your self-doubt prevent you from implementing any of them.
All they have to do is start. You don't even have to be good at it when you first start, right? You just got to start and then improve upon the process as you go. If you don't know where or how to start at all, Hey, that's why I offer my seminar on technology, where I could help people to get over fear of technology. I start very, very slow with the absolute basics and build from there. I've taken people that had no understanding of how to do any part of this, had no understanding of technology at all, and help them build themselves up into content creators. It's the proof is in the pudding, as they say. It's been done. It can be done.
Yeah.
It's a matter of starting. It's a matter of putting your mind to it and just making the decision that you're going to begin. That's where it begins. That's where it starts.
Yeah. I mean, certain people get indoctrinated in the military and stuff like that. I want to go over and fight the enemy, and what do they do to you in that thing? They train you, and then they give you the technology so that you're actually a useful tool that can go out and do these things. Now, we're trying to do the same thing here, ostensibly, but instead of killing people, we're trying to train you and teach you how to educate people, which will actually wind up saving existence from
That's right.
itself.
Look, we're in a war, and information technology is the weapons are the weapons of the type of warfare that we are in, because it's largely informational warfare. And if you don't know how to wage the informational warfare in this war that we are in, you're not an effective soldier on the battlefield. It would be the equivalent of having someone thrown into a theater of physical war with zero training and having no idea how any weapon works. You don't know how the gun works. You don't know how this, tank works. You don't know how this truck, how to drive this type of truck. No aspect of being able to physically wage the war would be understood, and the person would be a completely ineffective participant in the theater of war. That is really what we have today with people who are completely ignorant of technology. They don't understand that it's informational warfare, and unless you understand information technology, you're not an effective combatant in the type of warfare that we are in. And that's what I've been trying to explain to people for the better part of a decade, or at least a decade, is we're at war, and you have to learn the weapons of war to be an effective combatant in the war if you want to win it. And once again, I know I've been sort of, plugging my seminar, but that's what it does. It trains people in the weapons of the kind of war that we are actively engaged in right now at this time in human history.
Yeah.
You'll learn how those weapons work, and you'll learn how to deploy them.
Yeah. But of course, there's lots of people who join the military, and then as soon as their tour of duty is over, they leave the military, and they come home and they act as veterans, and they get on the psych meds and so on and so forth. And I think there's a big aspect of that in our movement as well. There's a lot of people who were here yesterday, but they ain't here today. All right, now
I see that same dynamic, Vinny, where a lot of people don't have staying power, right? And there's nothing wrong, as we said earlier, with taking breaks. You may have to take hiatuses and breaks for mental health, for just your own rest and rejuvenation and recovery. No, there's no problem there. But what Vinny's specifically referring to here in this dynamic is here today, gone tomorrow people. It just, they come along, they do their little thing, their little aspect, and they say, well, my work is done here, and then never to be seen from again. Or they come out as opportunists, and they reel people in with some type of a scheme or with a promise, or some type of thing that like keeps them on the edge of their seat for a little while, and then they get the resources that they want from that, and then they're out the back door. What we don't need people like that. We need people with true staying power, is what Vinny is referring to here. People who are going to be in this war for the long haul and realize it's not going to be, it's not weekend warrior stuff. It's not, pack a bag for the weekend and then everything's going to be fine on Monday morning. This is a long-term battle. This is looking at it from the long view perspective. This is something that you have to be willing to invest the duration of your life in, quite frankly, is the real answer. You have to make a life commitment to it. And that's a very difficult and tall task for most people to respond to that kind of a call of duty, but that's really what we're talking about here.
Yeah, and it's concerning to me because there's a element of when you're being raised. Do you get raised in a matter where you get challenged, and if you go, oh, this is really, really difficult, does your parent then go, oh, okay, let's just give up now? All right. Or does the parent go, no, focus, sit there,
right.
Do it, finish it. You can, you can, convince yourself of it, don't stop. Just get it done. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be amazing. It doesn't have to blow anybody away. But you do have to do it. Okay? That's the whole idea. And I am personally, I feel kind of like, I don't know, maybe you feel this way as well, but I'm out on point. And don't feel like I got an army backing me up. Right? Like if I encounter anything that I don't know how to deal with while I'm scouting out there, I'm going to be destroyed. And there's nobody there to save my ass.
Vinny, thank you for bringing up this whole aspect in this segment as you're doing, because it hits home so fully in what I have been literally harping about, especially in my seminar. And I'll address both of these dynamics. The first is the greatest disservice that could be done to a human being is for their parent or guardian or their example or their role model to say to them, it's okay for you to give up, feel frustrated and just walk away, leave this incomplete, not continue to press forward, not continue to learn, not continue to refine until you push forward to completion. And again, I also appreciate you saying there is no perfection demanded. They would equally be doing them a disservice saying you have to get this perfect. No, you have to push to completion and do something that is competent and do something that is effective. It never has to be perfect. No one should or could reasonably demand perfection from anybody. And I see this dynamic in our community too often. He told 10,000 things that were true and got one thing wrong, and so he's a disinformation operative. That's not how reality works, folks. People make mistakes. We're human. We're fallible. No one is perfect. If you're expecting perfection, you expect what never has existed and what never will ever exist in the three-dimensional space-time continuum that we call the universe. Get over it. It's not going to happen. There is no such thing as perfection. It's a construct. Perfection is a construct of a mentally diseased mind. I'll literally say, I'll go to that much of an extreme in saying that that's literally what perfection is. It's someone who has a mental imbalance, believing that something can be achieved that can never be achieved. There is no such thing as perfection in the 3D world. That is the realm of abstraction. That is the realm of pureness. That's not this place. We don't inhabit that space. Not saying that there may not be any areas of the universe or other places that exist like that, right? Not getting into that discussion. But if you're here right now on Earth, it's imperfect. And it's going to be imperfect. You have to learn to live with that, right? So, great points that you brought up there, Vinny. Now, the next part that you were saying, how does it make you feel that we have people that are sort of trained like that, quote unquote, to give up, to not continue to press forward, to not continue to press toward completion? They'll start something and then they won't finish it. They'll see that something is hard and they'll give up quickly. Our team is the Bad News Bears, and we're playing the greatest legacy baseball team of all time. Okay, we're playing like the New York Yankees at the peak of their legacy. We're playing the Houston Astros at the new upcoming legacy, and we're the team, the bad news bears that can barely swing a bat, and it's not good. And I'm not saying this to beat up on anybody, not saying this to discourage anybody, not saying this to berate people. I'm being honest with my analysis. Our team is terrible, and it needs significant improvement. It's beyond terrible. It's abjectly awful where it's at right now in this moment. Right here in this moment, I cannot tell people a lie by telling them we're doing great, guys. We're on task, we're on target, and it's going the way it's supposed to be going, because it's not. Let's face it. And I feel the same way. Like, see, it discourages the people that are really truly doing the work at a higher level, because we're looking behind us and like, okay, is everybody back here backing us up? And we turn around and it's like, this is who's on our team. This is who we have on our side right now. It's a sick, cruel joke. You're throwing the bad news bears with maybe one decent player, two decent players, in against the champions, of all history in this sport. And the tables are very, very, very unfairly imbalanced at this time, let's just say. Now, that doesn't mean people should give up. That means that we have our work cut out to try to influence people to do this work and do it at a decent level. Not necessarily a perfect level, but at a higher level than what most people are doing, and an accurate level. And, if we continue to try to inspire people and enlighten them and teach them, and more teachers arise, maybe we can expand that dynamic exponentially and eventually build a decent team. Right now, the very best that I could say, without overinflating it, is we are at the absolute level of infancy in the beginning of the development of any level of adequacy, competency, and driven willpower on our side. It's not there yet, but there may be the very, very, very beginning levels of the infancy of it beginning to start to just rumble a little bit. And that's about all. Hear those as encouraging words from me, okay? Because that's about all I can give people at this point. It's got to be way larger of an effort from a perspective of competency, skill sets, willpower, staying power, and numbers. All of those things. So that's my take on that dynamic.
Yeah, and there's also this Johnny-come-latelys. There's a lot of them, right? Stuff only just started getting bad in the last couple of years. No! It's been bad a really long time, bro. Since before you were even born, it was really, really bad. And now all of a sudden that you've noticed that something's going on, like you actually, you're finally paying attention for once. Okay, and then you come out and you're like doing your thing and you're trying to save everybody's ass and so on and so forth. Where were you? Right? And I think it's the fact that they come out, they don't pay homage. They don't have any respect for those who have come before them who've been doing it a lot longer than they have. So when those people open their mouth and try to give them advice, they ignore them, and then they fall flat on their face, and then they quit, and they fizzle out, and they're freaking useless. I'm sick of these Johnny-come-latelys, man. Sick of them.
It's one of the dynamics I really tried not to engage when I broke into this whole field of endeavor, because I realized there were people that were in it for so many more years than myself when I began. And it's like, imagine having, done this type of work for as long as someone like Jordan Maxwell did for all the years he did before he passed. and somebody like David Icke being involved in this for over 3 decades, yourself doing this as long as you have, etc. And you can go on and on. I mean, it's amazing. I'm in this now 15 years deep, and it's you have to have respect for the people that came before, because it's always a cumulative effort. It's never, no person's an island, no person's work just stands alone by itself. We put work out so people can build upon it, and so that they can aggregate data more quickly and understand it more quickly and readily, so that they can get to work putting it out there for others as well and reaching more people. So, that's the whole idea, is we stand upon the shoulders of giants that have come before us. Without them, we would have taken longer to learn what we currently understand. It would have taken longer. It would have been more laborious of an effort, instead of being condensed. And then we're trying to condense it to the essentials, to give that out to people so that they can learn it even more quickly. I look at, it took me the better part of a decade at least to even have the beginnings, the rudimentary aspects of what I came to know. And then I'm putting work out where I feel like if people look into it and research it, maybe they could do it in 2 years instead of 10. And then if it gets condensed even more, maybe people can wake up in a year instead of 10 or 15 or 20. We need that acceleration. We need that quickening process to come about, because we don't have an infinite amount of time. I would say we don't even really have another full generation before things get really, really bad. And they're already really bad now, but things are going to degenerate within a generation's time if we don't turn it around quickly. So that condensing of that information and compacting it into more readily digestible forms so that people can really truly accelerate in their awakening process is extremely important.
Yeah. Like I recall when I was a young truther, it was all the older, wiser, more experienced people that I was interviewing on this broadcast all the time, and that's what allowed me to change in a better way. But now what I see happening is people have gotten themselves to a certain size, and now they only interview people who are smaller than them because they don't want anybody stealing their thunder. And I'm like, this is completely the opposite of how it works. They don't steal your thunder; they put wind in your sails.
That's right. That's right. That's who I prefer to interview, people that I have respect for with their work. I luckily did get a chance to talk to Jordan Maxwell. I love the interview that, you brought me in on with David Icke. It was really the first time I got to truly have a conversation with him. And, that is the kind of respect that we do need to have in this community, because we have to understand other people went through even more hardship than ourselves in acquiring this information and making sense of it. And we have to have appreciation for people like that, and the amount of work that they did when even less people were listening, putting this work out for other people.
It's pointless, I think, for a large amount of people, what they're currently doing, right? In terms of, we're interviewing people and we're getting the truth out about this, that, and the other. It seems kind of pointless to me, because they've come into this, they've had their own realization, and now they're conducting their little investigations and trying to figure things out, little piecemeal and stuff like that. And I was like, man, you should just interview some people who've got like decades of experience on you, and ask them how they started and what they're doing and that kind of thing. There's been a lot of people who've started up radio shows based upon listening to my radio show, who've decided not to commit suicide after listening to my radio show. Or I remember one guy called me very early on, and he said he'd been listening to talk radio for 20 years. And in the first year of listening to the Vinny Eastwood show, he learned more than all of the last 20. All right? Because information is not equal. Okay? There's good information, bad information, dithering, and so on and so forth. But if you're just honest, I think honesty really gets through to people, and it helps them to wake up significantly faster than, just as you were saying before, being told what you want to hear and making it all easy on you.
That's right. And, that's part of the dynamic that I had to wrestle with early on, becoming a public figure and a disseminator of this type of information. I had to decide, am I going to really, take it easy on people, put on some type of a persona and try to get people to like me? Or am I just going to come out and just try to be who I am, try to say the truth very plainly and simply, lay it out there for people, let them make sense of it, put it out there in a way that they can make sense of it, and just be honest. And I'm very glad that I took that latter approach, because if I would have, gone into a non-genuine display of personality and, really, tried to embody some type of a persona instead of just be who I am, I think I would not have reached the amount of people that I even have. And, that's not to say that it's a tremendous, tremendous amount of people, but it's, I think it's, at least a significant portion of human beings that I've been able to reach and help make sense of things. At least I would like to think so anyway. In the grand scheme of things, it's certainly a small amount. And it needs to really be, accelerated and elevated to much, much greater numbers in the future if we're really going to have a chance in the years and decades that are coming.
Yeah, this whole dynamic has kind of like gotten me sort of worried to a large degree that we're not going to be successful. Because as you've said on your show many times, that evil can win. All right, yes. I am sick to death of hearing these people just going, "Oh, don't worry, good will win out in the end." It's just like, okay, have you heard of communist Russia or the revolution in China or any number of thousands of different takeovers by evil throughout the entire course of history? You ever heard of those? Oh, yeah, but evil won out in the end. No, it didn't. It got defeated. And then eventually, after a while, people woke up and maybe overthrew them and stuff like that. But we might be at the tail end of that dynamic. We might be entering a phase where the technology exists where you could suppress any uprising that ever happens for the end of time. That's the situation that we're in, which humanity has never been in before. This is a whole new game, ladies and gentlemen.
That's right. I mean, imagine, saying good just triumphs over evil all the time is the equivalent of watching a fire begin in your house and saying, well, that'll eventually burn itself out. Yeah, after it consumes the entire place, Yeah, fires stop, eating their way through things once they, don't have any more fuel to consume, right? So it's like the equivalent of saying, well, that fire, it's starting to go pretty heavy there. I'm not really going to do anything, because, eventually fires burn themselves out, and then, a couple hours later, you're not going to have a home to live in. It's literally the equivalent of that, it's literally that level of madness, of insanity. To say good just triumphs by nature, but by default. No, it doesn't. Evil can win. Evil has won in the past. Evil can win again in the future. And it's a free will. It's a collective free will decision whether we will let evil triumph or not, or whether we will stop it. And that's a decision that each person has to make in the moment with themselves. It's a personal one-to-one decision to get involved in that battle.
Yeah. There's a lot of apathetic people out there, and currently, I gotta be honest with you guys, I'm one of them. It's very difficult for me to care at the moment, and I figured out why it was. Liver problems. Did you know that you have you can become apathetic if your liver is not doing well. Wow. I didn't know that. And what's interesting is that all of the things that you do in your daily life, you know, all the junk food and processed food and so on and so forth, carbs and beer and cigarettes and coffee and whatnot. Basically, everything everybody does all day long, right, kills your liver and then makes you apathetic. And I'm starting to think to myself, you know, I think they've actually created a society where this liver problem is going to come to pretty much everybody. Now, what can you do with a society that literally doesn't care about anything? What can you do with that society if you're in control of it? Anything you want!
Put them through the great meat grinder of society, of history.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
So I'm struggling with...
care is the ultimate dynamic that drives everything.
Yeah.
That's the underlying dynamic. It's the underlying essence. It's the underlying characteristic that has to be developed. Care is what will drive right action. Care is what drives the will. If care isn't present, the will to do anything is not going to be present. This is the fundamental basis of the saying, where there is a will, there is a way. Well, where there is a will, there has to be care underneath it, driving it. You know, if there's no care, there's no will, and then there's no way. And this is what I call in my work the lost principle of care. Care is ultimately the engine that drives manifestation, because it precedes the will.
Yeah.
And if it's not present, forget it. Then all efforts are doomed to failure,
Yeah. And I'm just kind of thinking, like, at the moment I'm on sort of care autopilot. Like, I know how to care because I did, but now I just don't feel it. But I know all the actions and everything that I used to take when I did care. So I'm just mimicking those actions and continuing to do them because that's the right thing to do. Even though, if you ask me honestly, I really just don't give a shit, man. I've been through too much for too long, and need a holiday, need a break, need this, that, and the other. Need to get my health back, and the other.
Not intellectually actualizing it. Let's say it's still there, right? It's still really driving it, or you wouldn't do the behaviors. And I kind of tend to feel the same way. You can't get super emotionally attached. That's not. I wouldn't say that you don't care, Vinny. We all know that you do. We know that I care, but
I do in theory. You're
not super emotionally attached to the outcome because, from a level of knowledge, it could go either way. Let's face it. It could go either way, and it's going to be a matter of how many people collectively care, right? At least we can say we did care. And we did make an effort. And our effort was a damn good one from our perspective. And we tried to get other people to make a damn good effort. And guess what? That's all anybody can really do. And that's all anybody that can be reasonably expected of a person in this life at this time in history with what's really going on all around us.
Yeah. You have to actually make an effort. You have to make an attempt. And even if you're not successful, hey, at least you tried, right? Now, Yoda was like, do or do not. There is no try. I was like, I don't think that's necessarily true.
All there is to try.
Yeah.
All there is to try. Yeah. In the Rosicrucian Credo, the whole condensing of the whole philosophy comes down to one word, and that is try. Do not let the effort go unattempted. Make the effort. Try. When you apply your will, you'd be surprised at what you can accomplish.
I was just talking to Billy TK and his camera girl today, and she was in a little small town, South Island of New Zealand, called Balclutha, where they had this company that was planning on mandating the jab for all of their workers and stuff like that. And she and only a couple of other people really started up a furious little campaign in that district to stop that from happening. And they did. Just a few people got off their ass, saw an injustice, did something about it, and were successful. That is the story of mankind in a microcosm.
That's right. That's right. Effort, effort, willpower, driven by care. You know, we apply that, there's going to be a pretty decent, bright future for humanity. If we don't, most people aren't going to want to live in the manifestation that results, unfortunately. So I think that's a perfect place to leave this one, and give people a lot to think about as far as what is going to be the role that you take up personally out there. How are you going to try? How are you going to apply your will? How are you going to succeed in that effort? Because we can, if we really apply ourselves and are driven to accomplish something in this world.
Yeah. And don't tell us your idea. Go out and do it. Try.
That's right.
All right.
Just get out there and start, and you'll be surprised at how much that effort will accelerate and take off and take on a life of its own. And it will have been started by an act of your own willpower, and that's what it's all about. That's what being actively involved in the spiritual battle that we are all finding ourselves in at this time and place. So just get out there and start.
Yeah. And even if it winds up being crap, just look at it again and go, man, my first effort was pretty crap. Wonder what my second effort is going to be like. And then just do it. Don't even think about it. Just go ahead and do it. I mean, because ultimately, at the end of the day, the only person standing in your way is you. All right? Okay? You have failed the world. Yes, you. Because you listened to your own lies about yourself. You doubted yourself. That's on you. Okay? You don't want that to be on you? Then do something about it. All right? I don't care how many plans you've made. I don't care how many speeches you've given. It is your actions that make a difference, nothing else. If you are trying to make a difference without action, you are wasting everybody's time, including yours. Just stop it, okay? Just stop it. Mark Passio, What on Earth is Happening.com. And you've got a massive podcast series. Ladies and gentlemen, you've got to go to the podcast section, go to podcast number 1, start from there, and then work your way through them all the way to the end in sequence. That's what Mark wants you to do, ladies and gentlemen. That's not a small task that you're being asked to undertake, ladies and gentlemen. That is a monumental effort. It's nowhere near as much effort as he put in to create him, but it's enough of an effort to educate yourself and get out of that dynamic that you have perhaps been stagnating in. You haven't been living, you've been stagnating, okay? Me too, all right? Just stop lying to ourselves. Okay, I admit it, I'm imperfect, I'm a freaking idiot, I'm bloody useless, and I'm going to do something about it now to change that aspect. Okay? And that's all you got to do. It's not really that hard. It just is about making that decision, being decisive. Okay. There we go. I think you got my last rant of the day. And you got to go, have you? Yeah.
Yes, right. Yeah, at this point, yes. But Vinny, absolutely great interview. I mean, you brought up so many dynamics that are really weighing heavily upon my mind without even prompting. It's just, I guess great minds truly think alike in this instance, because some of the topics that you brought up are really hot topics in my mind at this current time. So thanks for taking the interview in that direction. Thanks for having me on the show again. And, I hope people take this one to heart and really, actively really try to drive themselves and employ their own willpower to get involved and do something. And again, if you want to check out more of my work, whatonearthishappening.com. Start with the podcast. I got videos up there, a documentary on natural law, etc. So, take it at your own pace, and I guarantee you, if you do, a whole new worldview and perspective on reality will open up for you. So, Vinny, as always, thank you for having me.
No worries, brother. Thank you so much for your time, and we will catch you again soon, brother. All right. So I'm going to just wrap up with my little bit of self-promotion here at the end of the show, ladies and gentlemen, while Mark goes. Cheers, brother. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Vinny.
All right. And let's go on to now our little screen. We've got a merch page on the Vinny Eastwood show.com at the moment, ladies and gentlemen, with male and female t-shirts that Rebecca has kindly put up. They're definitely not cheap, ladies and gentlemen. They are definitely not cheap. So if you're thinking about making a big donation and you want to get something for it, this is the basically the donate page where you get something back. So please think of it in that way. It is not a business, and Rebecca's running all of that as well. This is her kind of way of contributing to the show. However, I would also like to encourage people, those regular automatic payments into the Kiwi Bank, PayPal and Patreon really do make the difference on a day-to-day basis, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank all of you who do that on a regular basis. I really want to, but obviously I can't. Show people the list of all the little donations that come in and who's doing them and stuff like that, and give them my praise and props and so on and so forth. And I want to do that, but I can't really, because at the end of the day, if you're contributing to the show in a financial means, you are the sole reason why this show has continued. Okay? It's not me. I would have, starved or been kicked out of my home or had my internet cut off or something of that nature. Something would have happened to me to prevent me from being able to continue doing this show. And it is you guys, and you guys alone, and the contributions that you have made to this broadcast that allows it to continue. And I want to thank you really, really profoundly. I know I feel like really apathetic and stuff like that at the moment because just my health issues. But at the end of the day, the English language has like 400,000 words. The average person knows about maybe 20,000 of them. I know nearly 100,000 words. And I can't find the words to thank you appropriately for how it makes me feel that I can get up every day, whether or not I work, and there are people out there who appreciate the work that much that they still keep contributing, in some cases for years and years and years. And yeah, that's big, even if it's like a $2 a week donation, that's huge. And it stacks up over time, especially with lots of people doing it. So if you want to go to vinnyeastwood.com or the vinnyeastwoodshow.com/donate.html, links will be in the chat room, possibly description, I don't know, and start up a regular automatic monthly or weekly payment into the PayPal, or if you're in New Zealand, obviously the Kiwi Bank stuff is there. And if you'd like to support the band as well, Vinny and the Vendettas, we're currently getting into the studio now, and the studio is actually costing a fair amount of money to do all these recordings and arrange and form all the songs and things like that from the demo stage, which is what we've been doing for the last 10 years with the band, into the proper professional stage. So we're going to be able to get some real music out there and wake people up that way as well. So check out Vinny and the Vendettas on the website as well. Support us on Patreon. And I do want to thank specifically David Holden. He's been, naturopathic care is an incredibly expensive prospect. And David Holden has been giving it to me for free because he knows I can't afford it. He's literally saving my life. Thank you, David. Thank you, bro. Love you heaps. And guys, if you've got any health problems and things of that nature, and you need a decent naturopath and whatnot, I guarantee you it's not as expensive as I'm making out in terms of what you get out of it. Imagine being able to heal yourself with somebody who's no nonsense, knows all the pitfalls and things of that nature, can figure out exactly what's wrong with every single part of you and give you a regimen to fix it. All right, that's David Holden. He's been doing it for like over 30 years, and he's got a team that brings over 100 years of experience to the table. You're in very good hands when you're dealing with that. And my other sponsor as well, reopen.nz. They've been sponsoring the show all the way since back when we were before we got arrested, and I'm very, very grateful to Henry for doing that. And this little thing here is a directory of anti-mandate, pro-choice, all-inclusive businesses in New Zealand. So if you do have a business or you're listening to the show, go to reopen.nz and sign up and put your business there. All right, because there's lots and lots of little businesses all over the country that do all sorts of different things that are on this puppy here. And indeed, if you want something, you want to throw your money around or whatever, you want to go out for lunch, or you need your dog groomed, or you need a plumber or something of that nature, go to reopen.nz and see if there is somebody of that nature within your area. And if there is, go and put the money their way. Okay? You've got nothing to lose. And also you'll be supporting people who are part of the Truth Movement community. I think that's just wonderful. Now, the Vinny Eastwood archives have been lovingly put up by the wonderful Julia. Thank you, Julia. Oh, man, I'm so full of thanks and praise at the moment. I don't know how I'm feeling so good. But anyway, Julia has been putting up the archives of the Vinny Eastwood show since after we got deplatformed, so that they're on Odyssey, BitChute, Rumble, and the One Great Work Network, ladies and gentlemen. So if you want to go and support Julia's archiving efforts, just go to the archives page, show archives, just click on that, and in any archive there will be these little beautiful what are they called? Her donation details and things of that nature, ladies and gentlemen, to help support those support those archiving efforts which she's doing for me, and that's just wonderful. I'd like to thank Mark Passio as well for inviting me on the One Great Work Network, and my partner Rebecca for setting up the little merch table. And I'd also like to thank Billy TK and remind you that he's making a wee documentary called River of Lies, the New Zealand Scamdemic, and he was just filming with me. That's why we were like maybe 5 minutes late getting the show live today, because Billy and his camera lady were in here interviewing me for the documentary that they're making. And if you want to know more about our arrest, we are going... you can go to the homepage and just click on the banner, The Day Democracy Died, and watch the little documentary there. Man, that was a brutal arrest. And such nasty bail conditions and such slow grind of justice, which has cost us many, many, many thousands of dollars, and it ain't even over yet. Okay? And now we're going back to court on the 24th at 11:30 a.m. All right, Vinny Eastwood, Billy TK will be at the Auckland District Court on the 24th of November. That's next Friday, I think, to attend court and go through the next stage of whatever's happening here, guys. So please, if you can, come and support us there. And with that being said, I would like to say thank you very much, ladies, gentlemen, slaves of the global plantation. Vinny Eastwood show is bad news. It's like the news, but worse. It's the lighter side of genocide. Just because we're being exterminated doesn't mean we can't enjoy it. Otherwise, what's the point of being killed? The Vinny Eastwood Show. We're the only thing worse than living in a high-tech global police state run by child-trafficking Satanists. It's Vinny's jokes. They're that bad.